There are a group of us that have sons in their late 20s, early 30s. All of them are alone. They don't mention feeling lonely or say anything about wanting a relationship. Do they really wish they had a relationship and they don't say anything, or does apathy make it so they just don't think about it?
Really hard to know, right? Because we don't have a special scope where we can look into someone else's brain and understand what their motivation is. I think that if you're having conversations with them as a parent about, are you lonely? Do you wish you were getting out more? And they keep saying no, it probably is apathy. I find with people with apathy, there are degrees of apathy. So for some people with apathy, if it's not terrible, maybe your son is not able to make a phone call to a friend to go out to do something. Maybe if you get in touch with his high school friends and say, hey, the next time you guys go out, could you just take him along? Could you ask him to go? Sometimes people will get engaged and they'll enjoy it when people invite them along to do something. Other people with apathy, they really are happier not doing so much. They might go somewhere and enjoy watching what's going on, but they don't necessarily participate. For someone like that, it might be very hard to start a new relationship or a new romantic relationship, but seeing if some of the old friendships that they have could be restarted, seeing if there are other family members who could engage with them and get them involved in things. I think that's a good way to think about it, because with HD, there is a high degree of apathy. It's the one behavioral symptom where we know once someone gets it, it tends to stay and it tends to increase with time. So it could be more apathy. If someone says they're really not lonely, I wouldn't push them to start relationships, but you might try to strengthen the ones that they already have. Joey?
Yeah, I'll just plug another one of the amazing advocacy organizations. HD Reach just came out with a new program called Game Over HD, which is targeted towards young adults. It's a gaming program. I don't understand video games too much, but there's a chat room where individuals can talk to one another and play whichever game that they prefer. I think it's truly an amazing program. Emily and I have been recommending it to a lot of our younger individuals, but yeah, just another great resource and maybe a good outlet for someone who is not ready to go out and face individuals face to face, but just needs a little bit of connection.
No, I love
Awesome.
that.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. That's a resource we need to start using more.
They also have, Joey and I are so excited for them. They're thinking outside the box, which is amazing. And they're planning on doing a book club in a couple months as well, just open to anyone impacted by HD. So just again, making it a safe zone for free conversation, open, honest conversations. You can talk about HD, you don't have to talk about HD. So if you haven't checked out HD Reach, definitely check out HD Reach. They have a lot of momentum going, which is exciting.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And then Lauren also just said that HD Uncut, which is our new Help for HD live series once a month. HD Uncut was on Thursday with Chris Brown. And she said they actually talked about this very topic about dating and things like that. So you guys go check out HD Uncut on Help for HD Live. And Lauren and Chris talk about this same thing. I'm at Emily. Is there any place that is taking HD brain donations that aren't at any cost to families? And can you explain the process?
Yes, that is an easy answer for me. Yes, there are. The Huntington's Disease Society of America's website, if you go hdsa.org, and I know they have a lot of information, it can be overwhelming on their website, but in the corner on the search bar, if you just type in brain donation, they have a wonderful informational sheet that really lays out the process. The most well-known brain donation site is the Harvard Brain Tissue Resource Center, HBTRC. And basically you pre-register. I highly encourage, you need to have these conversations with your loved ones before registering so they know what the process is as well. Basically, you'll go through an assortment, conversations, paperwork, making sure everything's in place. And then the loved one who you have assigned has 24 hours from when you pass to call 1-800-BRAIN and tell them to notify their team to come in the body. So again, it's part, I encourage folks to do this as part of their advanced directives. Make sure multiple people are in this conversation, whether it's family, notify your healthcare professionals, social workers, doctors, anyone you want to know, because it is a beautiful thing to do, to take the opportunity of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say one thing you did say was find your support person in this, because my husband's brain donation went from completely seamless to the most stressful situation, and it can turn on you. And you could have everything planned. I planned his donation for months. I had my husband's brain was donated to the University of Iowa, to Peg Napolis's team over there. It was free. It cost me nothing. The team was excellent. The paperwork was signed. Everything was smooth sailing. So I made my husband's last wish. I had it set in stone. And at the last minute, his funeral home would not let the extraction happen. And everything went chaotic, and they wouldn't even come pick my husband up. So I had him in the care home by myself with him. And then luckily I had my support person, Katrina. Our family was with him, and she went out and started calling. We need to find. And so I did not need to be doing that right then. I needed to be with my kids and my family. I did not need to be calling funeral homes trying to find a place that would let the extraction happen. So have a support person. Even if you think you have it set up, it can turn on you.
And as you say that, I'm thinking the support person should be a little outside the core. So yes, I love Katie's husband and I'm part of her extended family, but the core people needed to be in this bubble with everything that was going on. So somebody that can step outside of the room and handle things is extremely important.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of times we only hear the good stories. We don't always hear the bad stories. So it's so important that you bring light to that situation so others can take advantage and do exactly what is being recommended, having multiple people involved. So the same situation doesn't happen again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next question is for Joey. I go to a center of excellence and have been waiting for a year to see a speech therapist. I have even tried going through the VA. The speech therapist there didn't know much about HD. Why is it so hard to get therapists? I thought it was supposed to be a multidisciplinary clinic, but I only see a neurologist and sometimes social worker. Any ideas on how I can go outside the center and get therapies like speech and PT faster?
First, I just want to apologize because that sounds extremely frustrating, and it can be an extremely frustrating process. So at Georgetown, we do have the privilege of having a physical therapist and a speech therapist that we recommend our patients to. An idea to go outside the center is working with your social worker or myself to find additional speech therapists and physical therapists. And then what we can do is bring in our physical therapist and speech therapist to talk with those providers to give them HD education if those individuals don't have any knowledge of HD or experience working with individuals with HD. Again, I do apologize. I don't have a clear-cut answer, but again, like I mentioned, the HD community is so creative and so resilient in finding the resources needed. And also Help for HD's new resource guide, I believe. Maybe that is an option of finding individuals outside COEs who can provide care. But again, just connecting with your social worker to see what other options are available.
Yeah, and I do see, and I don't know if Dr. Anderson or Dr. Stemming want to chime in here, a lot of the speech therapy that we're seeing, because this person mentions, they mentioned the VA, they did. There is like the VA, we keep hearing that they don't really know, the speech therapists are having a hard time understanding HD. Do you guys see that as well? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not in their training, unfortunately. And I think some VAs are very willing to work with HD centers. I think finding one that is, or just looking in the community until you find someone who's really willing to work with your center.
Yeah, in your guys' center, do you guys typically, if like speech wouldn't be, because to clarify this multidisciplinary, you guys don't have speech every time you have someone in the center, right?
We don't. We have a wonderful speech therapist who is willing to see people. She's licensed in 3 different states, or 2 states in the District of Columbia, as Emily said earlier. So she's willing to see people on a pretty quick schedule, as long as they're in one of those states, but she does not come to clinic at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think the benefit, similar to our physical therapists, both individuals have been working with the Huntington's disease community for probably 10 or 15 years. So they know a lot of these therapists already. So they're receptive to having conversations with our physical therapist, Lisa, or our speech therapist, Karen, because they know them, they trust them. And I think that's important, just having that relationship for our center in our community, because we do have patients from so many states coming to see us.
Thank you. Dr. Erin Stemming, any new behavior or cognitive drug trials on the horizon?
Yes, and that's another great question. Celebrate the fact that we do, in fact, have many effective medications and non-pharmacologic strategies to address the motor and the non-motor symptoms in HD. Although we still need some help. There's still room for improvement for cognition in HD and some of the behavioral and psychiatric symptoms. So there is actually a trial underway. The company is Sage Therapeutics, and they are studying a medication to assess its effect on the cognitive symptoms in HD. So that trial there are several sites that are active and enrolling throughout the US. I know we're a site here at UT, but if you look on the HDSA website, the Trial Finder site, or clinicaltrials.gov, you can potentially find a site near you and more details about that study and the medication. So that's a medication, like I said, directed at the cognitive changes in HD. We actually recently completed a trial. This was a single center trial, an investigator initiated trial evaluating the efficacy of a medication that's already FDA approved for another indication for irritability and outburst in HD. And so we're just analyzing those results. And so more to come on that front. We also have a study, it's again here only at UT at this point. We are not yet enrolling, but we'll be evaluating the efficacy of a home-based transcranial direct current stimulation therapy for some of the behavioral and cognitive symptoms in HD. So more to come on that front. But I think the bottom line is we have, as I said, we do have effective medicines and again, not all to imply that it's all about medication. We have effective non-pharmacologic strategies for many of the symptoms in HD, but we do have, there's always room for improvement. And so we do have trials that are underway or soon to be underway, evaluating some of these other more challenging neuropsychiatric symptoms.
And Dr. Stemming, 2 questions real quick. For the SAGE trial, because they aren't coming on with us today, are they still enrolling or are they fully enrolled?
They're still enrolling.
Okay. And then it's pill, right? It's a
Correct. Yes. Thanks for
oral.
asking. Yeah. So it's an oral, no neurosurgery or spinal taps for this study. So you know that there are those studies, disease modifying studies underway that are a little more invasive. So this is a pill and placebo controlled. So you may receive the study drug, you may receive placebo, but they are still enrolling throughout the US. And so if you go in clinicaltrials.gov, like I said, or the HDSA Trial Finder site, you can find centers and clinics near you that may be enrolling.
Okay, perfect. And you talked about irritability and outbursts. Were you talking about Azavan?
No, I was not. This was a study that we did just at little old UT, evaluating the efficacy of a medication its brand name is Nuedexta, and it's actually indicated for something called pseudobulbar affect or lability in emotional response. So we actually studied it in individuals that were experiencing irritability and some outbursts here. So we're, like I said, analyzing the data, and once we have that available, we'll publish the results on that study. But I think irritability, more importantly, as Dr. Anderson can also speak to this, the outbursts can be very scary and potentially dangerous for patients and families. And while we absolutely have effective medicines to try and address the irritability and outburst, they're similar but different. Sometimes the medications that we use are not enough, and we really have to try to implement behavioral strategies and to try and minimize the frequency and severity of outbursts. And I think just educating, as thank you to those that are listening today, having folks educate themselves on the possibility of these outbursts is really important, just to be aware that they can occur. And I have patients, I'm sure Dr. Anderson would say the same thing. We have patients that tell us, hey, I don't know what happens. I go from 0 to 60 in 5 seconds over seemingly no big deal. I can't control my anger. And so just for patients and families to know that this can happen and be prepared and try to minimize factors that may precipitate an outburst is really important.
What those are very serious, and we don't have any questions on this, but how should families prepare for that? Because I know a lot of times it's like a crisis, right? It's like you're in crisis. And I don't know if Dr. Anderson and Stemming would know like the best things to prepare for that, because the problem is then you prepare for it. And my husband never had it. I was always worried because I heard so many stories. I was always worried, like waiting for him to hallucinate, him to have psychosis, or him to have an outburst. And I just waited. And it luckily, thank goodness, never happened with Mike. But what are some ways of not overthinking it and being scared of it, but should you prepare for stuff like outbursts and things like that?
Not everybody with HD has outbursts and aggression and irritability, but some will develop it over time. Sometimes it happens for a while and then it goes away. We don't know exactly why that is, probably due to the different effects of HD on different parts of the brain. I agree not to overthink it, not to dread it if it's not happening, because it may not ever happen. But it is important to think about a little bit about what you would do if it happens. I think the biggest thing is to make sure that your home is safe. So if there are weapons in the home, to have those secured so that if somebody is extremely angry, they can't get a hold of a gun quickly and start shooting up the house or shooting at the neighbors or whatever. And also to understand that when somebody is extremely irritable and angry, you can't reason with them, you can't talk them down if they have a condition like HD. It is much better to leave them alone, leave the house, go next door to the neighbors and see if things calm down. If they don't, then you may have to call law enforcement. But arguing with someone, particularly patients will say, my husband follows me from room to room and it just makes me so angry. And if he would just leave me alone, I think I'd be okay. But when someone follows you from room to room telling you to calm down, that actually can make you way more angry. So knowing that you're not going to change somebody's mind when they're really upset like that.
Yeah, thank you.